Good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Welcome to Buddhist Fellowship. Today we have with us Bhante Buddharakkita from the Uganda Buddhist Center to give us the first part of a 4 series on the Alagaddupama Sutta, the Snake Simile Sutta. Bhante Buddharakkita was born and raised in Uganda, Africa. He first encountered Buddhism in 1990 while in India and received his higher ordination in 2002. He continued his meditation practice under the guidance of Bhante Henapola Gunaratana for 8 years in West Virginia, USA. He is the author of 2 books about the emergence of Buddhism in Africa and caring for our planet. Bhante has been teaching meditation in Europe, Australia, Asia, and the US for more than a decade. Welcome, Bhante Buddharakkita. Let's start with Namo Tassa before you begin the sutta.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. My Dhamma brothers and sisters, I'd like to give a talk on a very interesting discourse. It's called the Simile of the Snake. In Pali, it's called Alagaddupama Sutta. It's Sutra number 22 in Majjhima Nikaya, in this book. It's a long sutta, and I've decided to break it into 4. This time, we are going to discuss the setting of the sutra, and the simile of the snake, and the simile of the raft. So 3 parts we'll cover this time. Next time, we'll continue on until we finish the discourse, because we want to be slow but sure so that we can really understand the sutta very well. Of course, the simile itself is very interesting. Alagaddu is a snake, water snake. Upama means simile. And that's the theme of the whole sutta. We're going to look at the setting. Of course, it starts, that's a very hard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in Savatthi, in Jeta's Grove, and at Tapindika's Park. Now, on that occasion, a pernicious view had arisen in the bhikkhu named Arittha, formerly the vulture's killer. Thus, this is the view. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, though things called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. So that statement alone gives you some idea of the thrust of this discourse. On 2 levels, we can see, or we can look at that statement alone, or the setting itself. It challenges the Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching. I would call that doctrinal challenge. It challenges the Buddha's teaching. And also, that statement alone, it has a disciplinary challenge. So there are 2 kind of challenges we see right there in the setting. How does it challenge the Buddha's teaching, the doctrinal teaching? We have to look at another discourse in Buddha's teaching. That discourse is called Mahasihanada Sutta. Mahasihanada Sutta, the great discourse on the lion's roar. That's Majjhima Nikaya, number 12. In that discourse, the Buddha talks about the 4 intrepidities of the Tathagata. The 4 intrepidity of the Tathagata. This is this intrepidity, we can say self-confidence of the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha himself is very confident of what he's teaching. Sariputta, the Tathagata has these 4 kinds of intrepidity, possessing which he claims the herd leader's place. Lowers his lion's roar in the assemblies, and says, rolling the wheel of Brahma. And what are the 4? Here, I see no ground on which any recluse or Brahmin or God or Mara or Brahma or anyone else at all in the world could, in accordance with the Dhamma, accuse me thus: while you claim to be fully enlightened, you are not fully enlightened about these things. And seeing no ground for that, I abide in safety, fearless, and intrepidity. So that's the first of the 4. But according to this, the simile of the snake, it challenges the third intrepidity. And for the sake of time, I will just read straight, not verbatim, this part of the discourse, but I just got the second one. Intrepidity is, I see no ground on which any recluse or anyone at all could accuse me, while you claim to be one who has destroyed the tents, you have not destroyed these tents. And this, and seeing no ground for that, I abide in self-defense and the intrepidity. The third one, that's where I'm talking about the simile of the snake, is challenging the Buddha here of what he had already declared. In this one, it's number 25 parts, number 25. I see no ground in which any recluse or anyone at all could accuse me thus, though things called obstructions by you are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. And seeing no ground for that, I abide in safety, fearless, and intrepidity. Of course, the 4th one is, I see no ground on which any recluse or anyone at all could accuse me thus. When you teach the Dhamma to someone, it does not lead him, when he practices, to the complete destruction of suffering. And seeing no ground for that, I abide in safety, fearlessness, and intrepidity. So now you can see, as you read this discourse, the simile of the snake, you have to cross-reference other discourses in order to really appreciate this discourse. Because by making that statement and just read it and go without really looking at other discourses of the Buddha, you may not feel, okay, this was a very serious wrong view. That's why the Buddha is talking about pernicious view. It's not a simple wrong view, as you think. It's really challenging the whole doctrine, the whole Buddha's teaching. Here the Buddha say, well, this is where I'm standing as confidence. I have confidence, self-confidence. And you say, oh no, I'm challenging the Buddha. Really, the sutta, when you read it, that statement, it's just challenging the whole Buddha's teaching. I can read it in case. It's amazing. He's Arittha saying, I understand that the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstruction by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. So there is a doctrinal challenge there. Yeah. Now there is a second challenge. It's not so clear there, but anybody, for us, we understand as monks, because it's part of our rules. It's called Vinaya, disciplinary challenge. In discourse, this discourse also there's what we call disciplinary challenge, apart from doctrinal challenge. As you know, the Buddha's teaching, as he taught Buddha what we call doctrine, and then he taught the discipline. So that part of challenge comes from the disciplinary rules of the monks, who abide by 227 rules, of course, 331. So in one of our rules, it's Parajika, the 4 very grave rules for actually, if you engage in any sexual misconduct, then you cease even to be a monk. You cease to be a bhikkhu. But because he's a bhikkhu, he might have read more of the teaching of the Buddha, the doctrine, but he may be less trained in Vinaya, in disciplinary rules, and he didn't take it seriously, right? He's less trained in Vinaya. So he thinks, hey, well, for us monks, we are restricted from engaging in sensual pleasures. And what about all these lay people who actually attain first level of enlightenment, second level of enlightenment? And for them, they can progress on their Dhamma, because if somebody practices and the Dhamma and reaches stream entry, and second, which is once returner, Sakadagami, then he's progressing on a path. And here the Arittha said, no. For them, they can enjoy, but for monks, we cannot enjoy. So he's accusing the Buddha and say, no. Also a monk, if he engages in the same thing the people are engaging, their path is not obstructed. So in a way, he wants maybe Buddha to remove this and clear the way and say that, no, for the monks also, if they do the same thing that people do, they'll also progress. They attain first level of enlightenment, second level of enlightenment. Why bother having these rules? So the sutta doesn't say that, but really, that's what it really implies, that the Buddha's teaching, what he pointed at as obstruction, as hindrance to spiritual progress, they are not actually hindering spiritual progress. That's where this is talking about. So in Vinaya, of course, monks know that there are many rules, and one of them is not engage in sensual pleasures by way of touch, form, and all these things. And of course, this is something that the sutta is talking about also, that of course that rule maybe should be also removed. The sutta doesn't say it should be removed, but it seems to be the whole idea of Arittha, that, well, Vinaya doesn't make sense to him. So in other words, doctrinally is challenging the Buddha, and disciplinarily is challenging the Buddha. That's pretty much the setting of the sutta, and we're going to read and continue on. Of course, this same monk appears in our Vinaya, where he's still holding the view that what's called stumbling blocks by the Blessed One are not stumbling blocks. In other words, sexuality is not a hindrance to monastic life. So, and in fact, the background story also is very clear that on that account, then the Buddha declares that anyone holding such a view commits what we call pachitya. It's called the offense of expediation. And this entails, of course, confessing this to the Sangha, and so on and so on. But you know that actually there are two challenges. That's enough to know the setting of the sutta there, that there are two challenges. One is doctrinal challenge, another one is disciplinary challenge. So we continue with the discourse. Several bhikkhus, having heard about this, went to the bhikkhu Arittha and asked him, "Friend Arittha, it's true that such a pernicious view has arisen in you. Okay, is it true? They're asking, is it true? Then he replies, exactly so, friends. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct the one who engages in them. So basically, it's sensual pleasures. That's what it is. That's referring to. That's what is implying. Then this bhikkhu desiring to detach him from that pernicious view, pressed and questioned and cross-questioned him. Thus, friend Arittha, do not say so. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One. It's not good to misrepresent the Blessed One. The Blessed One could not speak thus, for in many ways, the Blessed One has stated how obstructive things are obstructions and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them. The Blessed One has stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering, and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. So now let us stop a bit. In many discourses, the Buddha talks about 5 aggregates of clinging. He talks about sensual pleasures, and he always gives these discourses. One of them is Pali Sutta, in Majjhima Nikaya, where the Buddha always talking about the what we call the gratification, asada, the gratification in essential pleasure. But it doesn't stop there. It talks about also the danger. It talks about the danger in indulging in those sensual pleasures, and it talks about the defilement of the same thing. It talks about the degradation. So those are called triple D: danger, degradation, and defilement. How does it defile? Is that whenever you engage in those mental defilements, next time they become stronger. In other words, they defile your mind, right? So that's defilement. And then degradation is that it lowers your grade. Yeah, if people are putting you in a higher esteem, then when you engage in such mental defilement, in general, mental defilement, whether it's anger or confusion, delusion, so it degrades your status, right? So people no longer put you in a high esteem, And of course, danger is dangerous because when you engage in them, it leave you more hollow, It leave you hollow, dissatisfied, and the discourses are going to really talk about this. But this is very, very important to remember, according to the Buddha's teaching, he said that if these things we are not having some little gratification, people will not bother. But precisely that there's some gratification. So the Buddha acknowledged that there's gratification there, but very little. But also he acknowledged that there's suffering, but it's more. Yeah, so because most people will say, hey, well, then how can I live my life without any of this? You see, the Buddha was just pointing out, well, you like to engage in such things. Yes, there's a little gratification. Yes, it's fine, but just know that there's little gratification and much suffering. So this is very, very important to note, right? Yes, in other words, it's like my teacher's saying, Bhante Buddharakkita, it's like you go to the supermarket. I was in Singapore, I've forgotten the supermarket there. Fair price? I don't know. Yeah, you go buy something and you get one free, You buy one, you get one free. Yes, and for me, it's very clear. One time, before I became a monk, I used to be a student in India in 1990, and I went to study there as an exchange student. One time, I read the newspaper, and then in the newspaper, they were showing us that there is snow falling. Snow was falling in Himalayas, and I've never seen snow except in a refrigerator in Uganda. I saw ice cubes. So now it was fascinating to see snow falling. I said, how does snow fall? I understand rainfall, but snow falling from heaven? No, I must go there and sit. So now when I went there, and then I was, it was sunny and very bright, and I was wearing a jacket, of course, and then I was stretching my shirt like this, and snow was falling. Everywhere snow was falling, and these Indians were wondering, this African who's playing in this snow. For them, they're just looking at me, taking picture at the camera. I'm telling you, it was very enjoyable. But after 2 minutes, it starts more or less 2 minutes, it starts melting everywhere. There was no more snowflakes. I'm telling you, I suffered a lot. I suffered a lot. Up to now, I remember very well how excruciating the pain was. So I enjoyed the pleasure of having snowflakes on my body and seeing them visually and touching them. They were soft and all that. But I got one thing free: suffering. That one I didn't have to yes. So, I mean, when I read this sutta and I had this experience in India, I say, yes, Buddha was right. Because I experienced it myself. So here the Buddha is acknowledging both, actually. That's an important thing. And of course, as other suttas like Pali Sutta, it talks about not only what we call danger, degradation and the defilement. It talks about also the freedom, the blessing of renunciation. Though here the Buddha in this discourse, the simile of the snake, doesn't talk about the blessing of renunciation, but he stops at least at the danger, and that's very clear. And he illustrated it in this about 10 similes. But of course, there are so many similes, but the whole message of all these similes, which I'm not going to read by one by one, because you can read it for yourself, it has one common thread that goes through each of the simile. One common thread is this. I can read it straight away here. All right. The breastone has stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering, and despair, and the danger in them is still more. So without really reading all the similes, this is the message. Each simile is very graphic, illustrating how dangerous it is. And I think if I'm to choose only one of my favorites, let me see. I can choose one of my favorites. Well, all of them are my favorites. I don't have to choose any. Yes. But I think if I'm to choose, because I'm in Africa, I used to climb trees. I used to climb trees, and then I like mangoes. I would get mangoes, and then I eat, and I sit there in the middle of the tree and eat without even botheration who's going to cut the mango tree. But I can imagine when you're enjoying there and somebody cutting the tree, you're standing or you're sitting on, and then it falls with your mangoes, and you break your hand and body, of course. That will be very, very dangerous, though you are enjoying the mangoes. But if the tree is cut and fell down, you will suffer, of course. So then you will know exactly what is little pleasure and much suffering. Though actually I've ever fell on a building when I was young, but that was not the mango tree. I fell on a building just on a shed. That means first floor. And then my hand turned the other way around, and I know the pain that I went through having fallen from the building. So I remember going to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor was a very, very senior lady who just pushed my hand like this and pulled my hand and turned it the other way around, because it had turned the other way around like this. So he turned it in the proper position. Up to now, I still remember him. So I know the pain of falling. So I could connect the two, but though the falling was from a building, but I can imagine when you're on a tree and somebody's cutting slowly and you fall down, that's how dangerous it is. So anyway, read the similes. They are very beautiful. And I told you the central message of each of the simile. So they're very graphic, right? So let's continue with the discourse. Yet, although pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by those bhikkhus in this way, the bhikkhu Arittha, formerly the vulture's killer, still obstinately adhered to that pernicious view and continued to insist upon it. In other words, he could not let go. He was holding to views. Actually, attachment to views is very strong, very, very strong. I mean, most of people say, okay, attachment to sensual pleasures, attachment to other kind of objects, but really our views, we really forget that this is our view. So it's very difficult to let go. So even when with all these similes, it seems to be that the monk was not convinced that this is being attached to his view. So we go to number 4. Since the bhikkhus were unable to detach him from that pernicious view, they went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and told him all that had occurred, adding, "Venerable Sir, since we could not detach the bhikkhu Arittha, formerly of the vulture's killer, from this pernicious view, we have reported this matter to the Blessed One." Number 5, then the Blessed One addressed a certain bhikkhu thus, "Come, bhikkhu, tell the bhikkhu Arittha, formerly of the vulture's killer, in my name that the teacher calls him." "Yes, Venerable Sir," he replied, and went to the bhikkhu Arittha and told him, "The teacher calls you, friend Arittha." So I say, "Hey, come, go and face the Buddha, our teacher." Okay, here he replies, "Yes, friend," he replied. And he went to the Blessed One. And after paying homage to the Buddha, which is a customary way of doing this, like you sat down on one side, and the Blessed One then asked him, "Arittha, it is true that the following pernicious view has risen in you. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, though things called obstruction by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them." Exactly so, Venerable Sir. Now he's accepting. Arittha is saying, "Yes, that's what I'm holding on. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstruction by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them." Now, number 6, there comes the language of the Buddha. The language of the Buddha. Number 6 says, part number 6, "Misguided man," the Pali word is Mogapulisa, empty-headed man, something like that, misguided man. "To whom have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma in this way?" Misguided man, have I not stated in many ways how obstructive things are obstructions and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them? I have stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. With the simile of the snake and so on. Now he's repeating all these similes. It goes on. And so page 226. I'm going to continue on. I'm going to continue on. "But you, misguided man, by your wrong grasp, have misrepresented us, injured yourself, and stored much demerit. For this will lead to your harm and suffering for a long time." Let us pause a little bit for this. Don't you think that the language the Buddha is using is a little bit sharp, a little bit blunt? This is a monk. He's calling him is very misguided. He talks about you have injured yourself, stored much demerit. I mean, it is even a question, where are those demerits stored? So there's a couple of questions I want to ask, all right? 1, is this language not harsh? Because the Buddha talked about speaking kind speech, So then the second question I'm asking, where are these demerits stored? Are they stored in the nose, in the brain, in the heart, in the stomach, in the legs? So these are very, very important questions to ask, where the Buddha say you have stored up demerits, you know. So I think when we tackle the first question is very, very important. We can say that the Buddha is now rebuking. The Buddha is rebuking this monk as misguided man. But you misguided man, you are wrong grasp. Again, rebuking has misrepresented us. In other one, the Buddha's teaching, the Sangha, right? So yeah, the whole dispensation is being represented. So it has injured us. These are not physical wounds, but emotional wounds, spiritual wounds, injuries, spiritual injuries, which are very deep, you know. So, and also it has stored up much demerit. This is a very, very, very important question to ask. Why is the Buddha using this language? To answer this question, we need again to borrow. We need to navigate around other discourses. This one discourse is called Abhaya-Rajakumara Sutta. Abhaya-Rajakumara Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya 58. The Buddha in this discourse, you can open this discourse if you want, but I will summarize it, but you should cross-reference it. In this discourse, the Buddha talks about 6 kinds of speech. 6 kinds of speech. The Tathagata. The Tathagata is a name that the Buddha called himself. There are 6 kind of speech that the Buddha uses. And it's very, very important to understand this discourse. Otherwise, most people confuse. When they get confused when they hear Buddha's teaching like this, they say, oh, the Buddha was speaking harshly. Yeah. Talking to Devadatta that you go to hell, talking to this monk. Yes. So now, in these 6 discourses, in this 6 kind of speech, the Buddha can talk about 4 kinds of speech. 2 kinds of speech the Buddha cannot talk. So we start with what the Buddha can talk. Buddha can talk about something which is true, correct, and beneficial, even if it's unwelcome and disagreeable to a listener. And in many ways, when the Buddha is talking about misguided man, injured us, stored up much demerit, it's not so more of a curse or harsh speech, but it's exactly this kind of speech that Tathagata speak. It has to be true, correct, beneficial. Whether it's unwelcome or disagreeable to least, he will have to talk. Right? You have to talk. But here the Buddha gives a condition where he can talk. He talks at the right time. Most people actually, the thing that they're speaking, they will say, oh, I'm speaking the truth, and something beneficial and correct, and they speak any time they want, you know. Well, that's not how the Buddha recommended us, and that's not Buddha's teaching. He said that he waits at the right time. Why does he wait at the right time? Because he has compassion for the beings. This is very, very important as we read the Sutra of the Simile of the Snake, to cross-reference to this discourse on Abhaya-Rajakumara, Majjhima Nikaya number 58. Otherwise, we'll choose the Buddha of sharp speech or harsh speech. Of course, with Abhaya-Rajakumara Sutta, the Buddha talks about he can speak something true, correct, beneficial, when it's welcome and agreeable to the listener. And then the 3rd kind of speech, for the Tathagata, he can speak when something true, correct, and of course, unwelcome and disagreeable to the listener, but still can speak even if it's unbeneficial. And of course, also can speak something true, correct, and beneficial, but it can be welcome and agreeable to the listener. But there's two kinds of speech the Buddha never speak. Something not true, not correct, not beneficial, whether agreeable or disagreeable, whether it's welcome or agreeable. So the Buddha doesn't speak that kind of speech. So in other words, untrue, incorrect, and beneficial, welcome and agreeable, he won't speak. On the other side, if it's untrue, incorrect, and beneficial, unwelcome, and disagreeable, Buddha never utters this kind of speech. So it's enough to say that this kind of speech is okay, and as long as it's the right time, when it's true, correct, and beneficial, and even when it's unwelcome and disagreeable. So that's the speech we find in this sutta of the simile of the snake. So we continue on with the discourse. I'm on part number 7. Then the blessed one addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Bhikkhus, what do you think? Has this bhikkhu Arittha, formerly the vulture's killer, kindled even a spark of wisdom in the Dhamma and discipline?" I told you about this kind of speech. We can add also that part of the speech. Really, it's kind of putting down, but it's not really actually. The Buddha is talking about what's true. You know? It's like it's talking about, oh, kindled. Has he even kindled even a spark of wisdom? Has he got, in other words, any iota of wisdom, though he became a monk? So that one, again, belongs to that speech I told you is true, correct, beneficial, but it may not be welcome to the listeners, all right? So now we continue on. How could he, Venerable Sir, no Venerable Sir, when this was said, a bhikkhu Arittha, formerly the vulture's killer, sat in silence, dismayed. That shows that this kind of speech is unwelcome, right? Is unwelcome and disagreeable, you know, dismayed, with shoulders drooping and the head down, glum and without response. So poor thing, you know. Can you imagine when the Buddha is rebuking you like this? But one has to understand the spirit, you know, what the Buddha, how the Buddha was talking and why he was talking. And then that's why I told you better cross-reference with the Abhayarajakumara Sutta. So now, then, knowing this, the blessed one told him, "Misguided man, you will be recognized by your own pernicious view. I shall question the bhikkhus on this matter." Part number 8. The blessed one addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Bhikkhus, do you understand the Dhamma taught by me as this bhikkhu Arittha, formerly vulture's killer? Does when by his wrong grasp he misrepresents us, injure himself, and store up much demerit?" Okay, this storage business, I need to describe this. So really, storing is not stored in somewhere in a place, physical place. This came up actually in one book. It's called Question of King Milinda. King Milinda with the Nagasena ask where is the karma stored? When somebody commit bad karma or good karma, where is it stored? And then the Venerable Nagasena say this is like planting a seed of a mango. When you plant a seed and it grows up, there's a stem, there's a branch, there's leaves. So where is the mangoes kept? You cannot see the mangoes in the roots. Mangoes are not in a stem. Mangoes are not in a branch. But when the right time to get to produce mangoes, the tree bears mangoes. So the same thing when the Buddha is talking about stored up much demerit. Don't think that the Buddha is saying, hey, this monk Arittha is stored somewhere in the stomach somewhere. It's in the mind. And when the right condition come, the results of having had these wrong views produce due results, you know? So this is very, very important to remember also this discussion between King Milinda and Venerable Nagasena, that actually is not being stored in the nose, the demerits, or in the ears, or where. So it's actually the conditions, has created conditions to, for demerits, and he will bear the results of that, of having bore those kind of wrong views. So this is very important to remember. So we continue on. Okay. Number 8, I'm continuing with number 8. No, Venerable Sir, for in many ways the Blessed One has stated how obstructive things are obstructions, and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them, in other words, sensual pleasure. The Blessed One has stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering, and despair, and that the danger in them is still more, while the simile of the skeleton and so on, he gave all those similes to illustrate that, of course. So I'm continuing on reading here. Good, because it's good that you understand the Dhamma taught by me. In other words, other monk except Arittha is the one who was not understanding. By the way, in history, there has been also other monks, not only Arittha, who had the similar views actually, but because of time, I'm not going to mention their names, but it's not only alone, but here, at least the monks the Buddha questioned, they answered rightly the Buddha, and it's only that time Arittha is the one who is having these views. Okay, I'm continuing on. For in many ways, I've stated how obstructive things are obstruction and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them. I have stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering, and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. With the similes of all these similes, again, the Buddha is referring to them. There are about 10 similes. But these bhikkhus, Arittha, formerly the virtuous killer, by his wrong grasp, misrepresents us, injures himself, and store up much demerit. For this will lead to this misguided man's harm and suffering for a long time. He didn't tell us how long, but for a long time. But of course, you should understand because it depends on how long he has been holding on to these views and the gravity of the views, For a long time, he doesn't tell us for 2 years, 3 years. These are conditions coming together, But of course, when it comes to wrong views, it brings suffering for a long time. But the Buddha doesn't tell us like 1 lifetime, 2 lifetime. But of course, that's enough to guide us that we should not actually hold wrong views and pernicious views like that. Now, number 9, bhikkhus. That one can engage in sensual pleasures without sensual desires, without perception of sensual desire, without thoughts of sensual desire. That's impossible. The Buddha here is saying that it's really impossible to really engage in sensual pleasures without even a thought of desire, right? That's not the way how things work. Yeah, you'll have definitely thoughts. You'll have perception, right? Your perception. So the Buddha saying that it's not possible. I think that's very clear. We continue on. This simile, the simile of the snake, which is the title of the sutta. The simile of the snake, it's really very interesting, as you are going to see. Myself, I've never held a snake by the neck, but I know I've ever stepped on the tail of it, but I walked quickly. But I like Buddha's teaching because the simile is so graphic, Yeah, so this simile is really about the wrong grasp. About what? Wrong grasp of the Dhamma. In other words, it illustrates how we should grasp the Dhamma. This simile. It talks about how when you grasp it wrongly, it will turn against you and bite you, and especially when you touch the tail, but also when you touch the stomach, I think. But if you want to really the snake not to bite you, you better hold the head so it will not be dangerous for you. So the Dhamma also is like that. The Dhamma is like that. The Dhamma is supposed to serve us, to help us, to uphold us. Literally, Dhamma means to uphold. Dhamma. So, but if we hold it in the wrong way, then it doesn't serve us. It bites us. It disables us. It disempowers us. Instead of empowering us, it disempowers us. So now we are going to go through this simile, and then of course there's another simile of the raft. But let's go through this simile, and then we'll see what implication does it have. Okay, number 10. Here, because some misguided men learn the Dhamma. This Dhamma, this is a what we call 9-limbed division of the Dhamma. This is the oldest division of the Dhamma. Of course, later on, the Dhamma was divided into different categories, but so far, this is the oldest one. The oldest one. One is, of course, discourses. Number 1, discourses. You read the suttas. Buddha's teaching, you see the discourses. You read the stanzas, expositions, verses like in the Dhammapada, exclamations, sayings, birth stories like in the Jatakas. There's marvels, answers to questions. That one is, we have what we call Chula Vedala Sutta and Mahachula Vedala Sutta. It's about questions and answers. So this is what we call the 9-limbed division of the Dhamma, the oldest division of the Dhamma. So we continue reading, but having learned the Dhamma, they do not examine the meaning of the teaching with wisdom. So that means whenever you read the Dhamma, you should examine the meaning of the teaching with wisdom. This is very, very important because it seems to make a distinction between knowledge and wisdom. There's a distinction between knowledge and wisdom. So knowledge is collecting bits and pieces here of information, and you get to know it. But wisdom is to know in detail. The Pali word is panya. That's why I like the Pali language, because it really tells you what the word means. Wisdom in Pali is panya. Pa is details, different ways. Nya is knowing. So here you are knowing in different ways, in details, in other words, right? And in Africa, we have a proverb which says that this proverb is from New Guinea, West Africa. This proverb says, knowledge without wisdom is like water in the sand. Water in the sand, it doesn't stick. It just goes through it, But knowledge with wisdom is not like water in sand. No. We can say it's like water in maybe mud. It absorbs it. In clay. It's like, actually, the proverb doesn't continue on, but I would say it's like water in clay. Because water, when it goes into clay, it sticks, But if water is in sand, it just goes through it because there are many stones and all that. So actually, when we read the Dhamma, we should reflect on it so that we can get wiser. That's why we have 3 kinds of wisdom in Buddhism. The wisdom we get from reading, then what we get from reflective, you reflect on it, and then there's wisdom that we get from development, bhavana. Yeah, so this is whenever we read the Dhamma, we should not read it like novels, we should read it with a deep understanding and insight, and again call it to mind and reflect on it and see deeper, how deep it is. Because for me, from my experience, whenever I read Dhamma, and then I go again, I get more understanding. The more I read it, the more I understand it. The more I reflect on it, the more I understand it. So that's why it's good to read slowly but sure. That's why we are going even through this discourse slowly but sure, not rushing through it, word by word, and try to reflect on it. Okay, now the Buddha talking about not examining the meaning of those teachings with wisdom. They do not gain reflective acceptance. of them. Instead, they learn the Dhamma only for the sake of criticizing others and for winning in debates. And they do not experience the good for the sake of which they learned the Dhamma. Those teachings being wrongly grasped by them conduce their harm and suffering for a long time. Why this? Because of wrong grasp of the teaching. Wrong grasp of the teaching. So people, they just grasp only the tail of the Dhamma, not the head. So now this teaching harms them, you know. So this kind of actually phrase reminds me of when somebody goes to in a restaurant and they give him the menu, they give her the menu, and just read the menu, and say, you know, in Singapore they prepare like this, in Uganda they prepare like this, just comparing, oh, you know, Singaporeans, they prepare the food better than Uganda. So they're just arguing. They have not eaten the food, but they just look at the ingredients. They say, oh, this is chomen. I don't remember the food in Singapore now, but I ate there many times, but which specific food, I don't remember. But anyway, rice. I remember I ate rice, which is like very purple, you know. I've never eaten that in Uganda. So now you go there and look at the menu, but don't eat, but just argue how in Singapore they prepare rice better than in Uganda. But you have not tasted the rice. So then most people, they're learning Dhamma like this. They don't eat the rice in Uganda, they don't eat rice in Singapore, so that they have a good basis to compare. They just read the menu and get a theoretical understanding. They just get knowledge and they know, oh, wow, in Singapore, that's how they prepare. But this is missing. Why about this coriander is missing? What about this is missing? This is missing. But they have not really tested the food, you know? So I think this is what the Buddha is talking about, that people just learn something, not to derive some good in them. Just like for me, I would eat food in Singapore and taste it, and the fruits, remember, wow, that's amazing, wonderful food in the library. And then even you take me out for eating in different restaurants, Chinese restaurant, wonderful. So I eat it, and then I want to experience the food, and now eat it, get satisfied, and I get good nutrients so that I keep health. You know, that's why I eat food. But if you just go to Singapore and look at the menu and say, you know, Singaporeans, they're not good cook. In Uganda, food is good. And in many ways, I've seen people travel. People who travel like this, like most American, they go somewhere. So where is pizza? Where is this? Where is this? No, you have to taste the local food, you know. And then it's, yeah, so now I've seen many people, actually it's very common, travelers. When they say, I remember some Sri Lankan, they travel somewhere and say, where is paripu? Where is Sri Lankan food? I want to eat Sri Lankan food in Uganda. Well, you can, but it will take a while. So what I'm saying that it's okay, you can really eat your food wherever you want it, but it's better you taste and see. Now, we continue on, that the Buddha seemed to be talking about two kinds of people here. Those who are wise and those who are not wise. Right? So the unwise person, they learn Dhamma without examining it, not reflecting on it, not gaining reflective acceptance, right? And also they learn it just for the purpose of criticizing others, winning debates, and don't experience the Dhamma. So now, the wise person, of course, is the opposite, right? They examine the Dhamma, they gain reflective acceptance, and they don't criticize others. And of course, this discourse is very, very, I mean, this part of the discourse, we have to reflect on what the Buddha is trying to illustrate here. It's a simile of the snake when you hold it, when you grasp on it. So it seems to be the emphasis here is how you grasp the Dhamma. Is it right or wrong? Right? So this brings me to what we call It's called venom paradox. Venom paradox. When you get the scientists, the doctors, they get snake and extract venom, and then they treat it, refrigerate it, and then the same venom can be used as medicine. Of course, this is not in the sutta, but that's my understanding and experience, that actually the venom can be injected in you straight away. And that's going to be a poison, you know. But the same venom can be also medicine if it's stored properly, treated properly, you know. So this has a big implication, actually, that the Dhamma itself can be poisonous. It can even poison others, especially when you misunderstand teaching, Buddha's teaching. Some of the misunderstood teaching of the Buddha is even the Four Noble Truths. People read only the first one, suffering, the truth of suffering. Then people meet the Buddhist people, you know, you talk about suffering, you don't talk about happiness. So now this is misunderstanding Buddha's teaching, you know, misunderstanding Buddha's teaching. Karma is already misunderstood teaching. Anatta is also non-self, is commonly misunderstood teaching of the Buddha. So especially the teaching on karma, if people are misunderstanding it, then it's not going to help them. Yet these are beautiful teaching on karma. It empowers you, the self-reliance and self-confidence. Then it can guide you, moral guidance, moral compass. So we see many teachings which people learn for the sake of arguments, not for the sake of understanding, and it ends up harming people and harming themselves because of their misunderstanding. So this teaching should be grasped properly, you know. This teaching should be grasped properly, and then for proper understanding of it, and then you can get something out of it, right? So the same, if you handle the snake wrongly, it will bite you. If you handle it properly, it will not bite you, right? So this is also has some kind of implication also in some of the teaching that I want to draw into attention now. You see, mindfulness practice. When you practice mindfulness, if you practice it properly, you can overcome suffering. Let's say the object of desire. It's the same object, if we practice mindfulness, that it can bring less freedom, you know. But it's the same object, let's say object of desire. When we are not mindful, then we suffer. You see? So mindfulness, the degree and the extent we can practice mindfulness can determine whether we are going to suffer or not, right? The object is the same. Let's say aversion arises, which is pushing out what you don't want, which is a form of desire, pushing out what you don't want. Even take an example of desire. It's the object there. And then when you're unmindful, you will continue to suffer. And it's the same thing, the object is there, but if you're mindful, you actually, you have free, you gain freedom, you know? So in other words, the same Dhamma, it depends on how you hold it. It can be a breeding ground for suffering because you have mishandled it. But the same Dhamma, if you handle it properly, then you don't suffer. So there is a saying that says that Dhamma protects those who protect themselves. Dhamma protects those who protect the Dhamma. Actually, the Dhamma literally means to uphold. Dhamma, literally, it means to uphold. So you uphold the Dhamma will uphold you. It's very, very important. So now, the sutta talks about suppose a man needing a snake, seeking a snake, wandering in a bush, and so on. And then the Buddha continued, it would turn back on him and bite him, his hand or his arm, or one of the limbs. And because of that, he would come to the death or deadly suffering. Why is that? Because of this wrong grasp of the snake. So too, here some misguided men learn the Dhamma and so on. Why is that? Because of wrong grasp. So the sutta keeps on number 11, this now on the other side, somebody grasping the Dhamma properly. Grasping the Dhamma properly, right? Okay, I'm going to read down there, 11, towards the end. Suppose a man needing a snake, seeking a snake, wandering in search of the snake, saw a large snake and caught it rightly with a cleft stick, and having done so, grasped it rightly by the neck. Then, although the snake might wrap its coils around his hand or his arm or his limbs, still you could not come to the death and deadly suffering because of that. Why is that? Because of the right grasp of the snake. So to hear some clansmen learn the Dhamma and so on, why is that? Because of the right grasp of the teaching. Number 12, therefore, bhikkhus, when you understand the meaning of my statements, remember it accordingly. And then you do not understand the meaning of my statement, then ask either me about it or those bhikkhus who are wise. So in other words, even this is an invitation from the Buddha to do what you call asking questions. That's why in Buddhism, that's why I like Buddhism, you are invited to ask what you don't understand. And then if you don't understand, you say, okay, I'll get more time. Give him more time, I'll get the answer. Then you ask somebody, at least until you get the answer. So the Buddha is inviting us to ask. Now, everything is pretty much clear here, I hope so. But why is the Buddha, again, getting another simile? Already this simile of the snake is enough to tell you exactly what the Buddha is trying to teach. Why is the Buddha now grabbing on another simile? Why doesn't he go straight and skip the simile of the raft? In my opinion, the simile of the snake can be misunderstood, can easily be misunderstood. That the Dhamma, we should grasp on it. So all what you have to do is to do the right grasp and you get it. But the simile of the raft will turn things around and say, well, the teaching is pretty much about grasping for non-grasping. Let's put that way. Let's put this way. It's more of the purpose of this Dhamma is the proper grasp of the Dhamma is non-grasping. Let's put it that way. Yes, that's why the suttas coming in, the new simile is coming here. Otherwise, Buddha will go on because it's easy to misunderstand the simile of the snake. Very, very easy. And many people do so, actually. Many people do so, and they get into all sorts of trouble, right? Sorts of trouble. So we are going to read this very clearly. You are going to see that here the Buddha is introducing the simile of the raft as a way of telling you that the teaching is for not grasping. The teaching is for not what? For the grasping. The simile talk is talking about the proper grasp, but an ultimate analysis, the Dhamma is not for grasping. That's the thrust of this simile. So we go through one by one, and then you are going to see for yourself that actually the teaching is for non-grasping. Okay, we continue to read. There's only 2 parts remaining, 13 and 14. All right, let me do this. Okay, because I shall show you how the Dhamma is similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing. For the purpose of what? Crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping. You see, it's kind of undoing the earlier sutra, the earlier simile, that for the right or proper grasping, wrong wrong or right. That's where we ended. But here the Buddha say, hey, no, not for actually grasping, for purposes of crossing. What is the crossing over? Crossing the ocean of suffering, the samsara, crossing from one what we call near shore. Near shore is samsara, and you cross over and you reach nibbana. That's the purpose of the Dhamma, is to cross over, not for grasping. Listen, the Buddha continued, and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the bhikkhu replied. The Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, suppose a man in the course of a journey saw a great expanse of water, whose near shore was dangerous. This great expanse of water is actually the ocean of suffering. There's too much suffering, right? And near shore, those near shore, whose near shore was dangerous, that means samsara, and fearful. And those farther shore, which is nibbana, are safe, right? And free from fear. But there was no ferry, boat or bridge for going onto the far shore, another to nibbana. Then he thought, there's a great expanse of water, whose near shore is dangerous and fearful, and whose far shore is safe and free from fear. But there's no ferry boat or bridge for going to the far shore. Suppose I collect grass, twigs, branches, and leaves, and bind them together into a raft. And suppose by the raft and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. And then the man collected grass, twigs, branches, and leaves, and bound them together into a raft. And they supported by the raft and making an effort with his hands and feet, he got safely across to the far shore. Then, when he has got across and had arrived at the far shore, he might think thus, this raft has been very, very helpful to me. Since supported by it and making an effort by my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. Suppose I were to hoist it on my head and load it on my shoulder and then go wherever I want. Now, because what do you think? By doing so, would that man be doing what should be done with the raft? No, Venerable Sir. By doing what would that man, by doing what would that man be doing? What should be done with that raft? That's the question. Here, because when that man got across and had arrived at the far shore, he might think, this raft has been very helpful to me, since supported by it, by making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. Suppose I were to haul it into a dry land or set it adrift in the water and then go wherever I want. Now, because it's by doing so, that man would be doing what should be done with the raft, with that raft. So I have shown you how Dhamma is similar to raft, being for the purpose of crossing, not for the purpose of grasping. Now, lastly, because when you know the Dhamma to be similar to raft, you should abandon even the teaching. How much more things contrary to the teaching? Well, this simile is very, very easy to misunderstand it. It's very, very easy to misunderstand it because it has, in a way, literal meaning, and also it has a figurative meaning, right? Figurative meaning. If we take it too literally, it would mean that once we actually learn the Dhamma and we are no longer suffering, we just throw it away. Kind of what we call moral nihilism, as the Bhikkhu Buddha talks about it. But when we look at the way, how the Buddha talks about the people who have realized the Dhamma, they actually have some of these qualities of the Dhamma. all these qualities of the Dhamma. Take an example of the Arahant. An Arahant who has 10 qualities, by the way, an Arahant is called a Seka, one who's beyond the training. One who, even if you attain the first level of enlightenment, you are still at training, you know. But somebody who has attained final enlightenment, who's called Arahant, his Noble Eightfold Path, it has 2 more factors added and become 10 factors. So he has qualities of right view, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right effort, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right knowledge, right liberation, right? So these qualities are there. They are intact there. So in other words, you should understand this simile with what I would say figurative meaning, to have some kind of figurative meaning. And one point I need to also to talk about is about how this somebody's having what you call collected grass, twigs, branches, and leaves. The Sutta doesn't talk about the Four Noble Truths, but my heart wants to believe that there are 4 things that is putting together the what? The raft. And that's what the Buddha taught. So I would call those 4 ingredients of a raft are the truth of suffering, the truth, the cause of suffering, the truth of cessation of suffering, and the path. Last time when I thought of the Noble Eightfold Path, but my heart wants to believe that since they're talking about 4 ingredients of the raft, I would think that this is the Four Noble Truths. And the teaching of the Four Noble Truths is for us to cross the ocean of samsara, suffering. The first noble truth, the task is to understand it. Second noble truth, the task is to abandon the cause of suffering. And then the third noble truth is to realize peace, ultimate peace. And the third is to devote. So when we practice like this, we are actually crossing this vast expanse water, which is, I would say, that means suffering. We can cross this ocean of suffering and reach Nibbana. That's how I understand it. Near shore is samsara, far shore is Nibbana. So it's mentioned there, right there. So now, my last point to this, before I close, I want to really underscore this, that the simile of the raft was more to straighten out the tendency of people that even something good that we should grasp it. So really the message here is that we should give up the grasping to wholesome states of mind. We should not abandon wholesome states of mind. We should not abandon the Dhamma. We should abandon our attachment to the Dhamma. We should abandon our attachment to the Dhamma because we need the Dhamma. It's like when you are in a building, you have windows. You have windows to bring in oxygen and stop the rubbish from coming, right? So at any time you say that I'm going to close the windows and I don't want oxygen, you always need oxygen, but you can close off the rubbish, you know? So we need the Dhamma. It doesn't mean that discard the Dhamma and you start practicing a Dhamma, right? And you, okay, if the 5 precepts saying thou shalt abstain from killing, no, I don't need the Dhamma, I start killing. And in many ways, some spiritual traditions, they have disguised themselves like this way. Probably they might disguise themselves like this, okay, because this is somebody who's enlightened, he's beyond good and bad. So he cannot go wrong, in other words. So they may be there. I don't know, but I'm just giving it. But what the Buddha is trying to say, that really chains are chains, whether they're made of gold, or silver, or copper, but they still bind you to samsara, right? So in other words, grasping, clinging is a fetter, right? That binds us to samsara. We should even let go of that attachment to good things. What about attachment to bad things, to answer some states of mind? That's what it's saying. But it's the simile is a bit confusing when you look at it literally. Somebody holding it on a head, and then we drop it. It is as if, okay, once somebody gain enlightenment, you actually drop right view, you drop everything, and just walk there. But I think that will be taking it too literally. No? But the simile gives the message is very clear, but it's easy to misinterpret it. But the way to go around this is to remember that is the attachment that we need to let go, because we attach to even good things. Say, yeah, I'm a good meditator, you know, and then you don't. I'm not going to go even to meditate. You know, yeah, I've stopped meditating. Of course, arahants still continue to meditate, not so much to learn and all these things, but to abide in happiness. You know, to abide in happiness, right? So with that, I'd like to end the sutta. 15 minutes past 1. That's already enough time. So I think I'm going to share the merit, and then next time I'll start from there. More 3 parts, because the sutta has 10 parts. 10 parts, but now I've covered only 3. Next time I'm going to
ask a couple of questions.
My question is, delusion is like something that probably everybody has in many degrees. Some people have a lot of delusion, some maybe not so much. But how do we actually know that? Like, how do we actually detect that we actually have wrong views, and how do we actually break out of it?
Yes, how to get it out. I start with how. If you follow a Noble Eightfold Path, it will help you. Yeah, if you follow the Noble Eightfold Path, right understanding, right thought, right, the whole Noble Eightfold Path, that's a path to get rid of anything you want. Yes, whether it's desire, a delusion, because each of them is an antidote. Yeah, wrong views. Yeah, then how to get rid of wrong views is practicing right views, because the first part of that Noble Eightfold Path is right understanding, right view. And if you have wrong views, the first part of your question is the delusion. Well, that's something. How do you know that you have delusions? Because you're already deluded. You're already deluded, and how do you know? There is a saying which says that the fish is the last thing to know that is wet. The fish is the last thing to know that is wet, because it has lived all its life in water. And now you say, oh, Mr. Fish, you are wet. He said, what? What do you mean? Get out of here. It doesn't know that it's wet. So now if you are deluded, it's not so easy to know that you are deluded, but there's a way of knowing. It's of knowing, because delusion, usually we have to look at other mental states around it. What's other mental state around delusion? It's not a standalone thing, but it comes along with the other cousins. What are those cousins? Hatred. It comes with a cousin of desire. So if you are a bunch of those 2 things, you know, and you're continuing increasing them, definitely you better know that you're deluded. You may not know delusion itself, but since it's conjoined, is a mental concomitant. In other words, you know, you know definitely for yourself, because, and also precisely, if you have any mental defilement, let's say fear, anger, anxiety, other things, you know, there's some delusion. Delusion is different from ignorance. I hope you know the difference. Ignorance is more of a spiritual blindness, darkness, you can't see. But delusion is taking things the other way around. Instead of seeing things as impermanent, you see them as permanent. Instead of seeing things as suffering, you see them as happiness. Instead of seeing selfless nature, and you see as a sense of self. So now when you have anger, instead of seeing it that it's changing all the time, you see it as permanent. and then he say, I'm angry for the whole day, for the whole 2 nights, for the whole 2 weeks, you know you are deluded proper, because anger as a mental state is rising and passing away from time to time. So once these things are showing up, you know that you are deluded. Because if you're not deluded, you will see, yeah, I have anger and it's leading to suffering, let me get rid of it. But since you are deluded, anger rises and say, wow, you fuel it. You say, I must teach them a lesson, why they did to me. And then you start either suppressing it, expressing it, repressing it, and the more aggressive form of it is expressing it. And now when you start expressing anger, then you know you are deluded, because the more you express anger, the more you get more angry. But if you're really not deluded, you recognize anger as anger, and then you say, let me arouse mindfulness and watch it. Is it rising? Is it staying the same? So that you can see anger for itself. It doesn't mean that you won't experience anger if you're not deluded. You will also experiencing it, but you are seeing it as it arises, as it passes away, and you're seeing its nature as its selfless nature, its rising and passing away nature, and all this kind of thing. I hope that helps.
At the start of the sutta, it says sensual pleasures are compared to a lump of flesh, grass torch, a dream, that so on, a snake and all that. A snake maybe and grass torch, you can see the much later on stress and suffering. But how do you see a lump of flesh or a dream as bringing you stress, despair, and later drawbacks?
Well, you see, I don't know if you've been dreaming, but you dream and you're enjoying parks and wonderful thing, only to wake up and you just see walls and bricks. It is satisfaction. Let's for instance, I'm dreaming, and I'm in a Sentosa Island having a good time with everything, and in a park, you take me to those botanical garden, and after botanical garden, we go eating with a group of Buddhist fellowship people. We eat wonderful pizza. There's wonderful places. And then you really actually, when you come out of the dream, you open, you're in Uganda, and you don't have even somebody to bring the food. So it's very disappointing, very disappointing. I'm telling you, it may not be as painful as falling from a tree and all these things, but it's very, very dissatisfactory, dissatisfying, because you really kind of wake up and all what you see is just a wall. You are not in a Sentosa Island. So you feel dissatisfied, in other words. There's that dissatisfaction that the dream didn't live up to what you think. The dream didn't bring you what you thought in a dream, only and you cannot go there and say, okay, now I've been dreaming about Sentosa, let me now buy a ticket and go to Sentosa. No. You cannot. So this is what causes suffering, dissatisfactory, not living up to what it is giving you. Your dream is not up the mark. Okay, there's another one. What about the what?
Lump of flesh.
Flesh. You see, oh, that's very graphic, because when you look about, you give a dog and then you throw and then the bone. And then when the dog start eating, only to find their bones. There's no really meat to get satisfied, Yes, so it keeps on eating, and even sometimes it finishes. If there's anything, it will finish it and continue only to get disillusion. That's what we call nibbida. Actually, this is a very good example for nibbida. Nibbida is actually you are disillusioned. The proper word, though, they talk about disenchantment, but actually disillusioned. It's like me when I was in Thailand as a layman. I was working, I had all these pictures, and I look at the ocean, beautiful blue water, good food, and all these things. And then it's like a meat there, but later on, you do the same thing again and again and again. but it doesn't bring that happiness, you know. So the same thing, you throw that piece of meat on the, of course it's on a bone, and then the dog will start eating and eat, and it finishes good if it's there, but it will finish it, and then it will keep on eating the bone, and the bone doesn't have a single piece of meat, and it will just get tired. It will just get exhausted because there is no satisfaction. And also it's very important, it's not more of the objects that's a problem, it's more of what we put around it. So that's a very good illustration how we relate to that object. It's not the object per se, the itself.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yes.
These similes are very, even in borrowed goods, borrowed goods are the same thing, you know. Yeah, you get such
more easier to understand. Borrowed goods. You after you return, oops, you don't have anything left.
But also for me, the dream also, because I used to dream a lot, and because I traveled a lot, you know, I traveled a lot as a lay person, moving from one country to another, Chile, Bolivia, Brazil. So now you will sleep and then you dream about bonito, very good rivers and beautiful fish, only to wake up, you're in Bolivia, where there's nothing like that. So you get disappointed, basically. Yeah, so I think it's easier to relate to it, but it's not as pain as it's in other similes, but it's more of that disillusionment you get, and that brings suffering because you're disillusioned. Really, for me, my experience with Thailand is not that I was suffering, because it's just actually getting the same thing again and again, you know. Good diving, good water, good friends. And then after 2 years, I say, hey, what's life? Is there anything beyond this, you know? You get actually dissatisfied. And then I had to leave the island, you know? I had to leave the island. And people say you should go to a mental hospital. How can you leave all this, you know? But me, I know how much I was suffering inside because I had already started meditating in 1994. I knew the peace that you get, not dependent on good dive or good food or good people. I knew already in 1994, I had done a 12 days retreat. I could compare and see exactly how much suffering I was going through, not that I was lacking food, not that I was lacking friends, but those things were there, but it was not measuring up that mark.
Thank you, Bhante. Last question, Bhante. You mentioned about the 9 limbs of Dhamma. Can you briefly state the 9 limbs of Dhamma?
Yeah, they are there in the Sutta.
Yes.
There are 9. You can count. One is discourses. You read the discourses. There's also stanzas in the Dhamma. There's stanzas. You read the stanzas. Gathas in the Dhammapada. There's expositions. Like you find expositions like in different discourses of expositions, like the Four Noble Truth. You find verses. It's very common verses like in Dhamma. 4 exclamations like udanas, I think, exclamations. There's sayings, utivuttaka, I think. And then the birth stories, jataka. There's marvels. And then answers to questions. That's called Vedala. Those are the 9 limbs. Yeah, in many ways, they are part of the books that we find, like Dhammapada. We find verses, verse number 1, number 2. You can always tell people, okay, can you refer to Dhammapada number 22? That's a verse, or gathas. You can say gathas. And then you can also see the birth stories in Jataka. Then you can find Itivuttaka. Then you can find the sutras itself. Then you can find the discourses themselves. We have already in Majjhima Nikaya, we have 2 discourses that speaks to answer to questions, because in this, like catechism, there are actually questions and the Buddha give answers. All right, this kind of thing. We see it in Khuddaka Nikaya, where the Buddha being they say, what's 1? That's nutriment. These are 10 questions to the Samanera. What's 2? What's 3? What's 4? Like this. So it's question and the answer. So this is actually already in the Dhamma teaching, the discourses and the Buddha's categories of book. It's already there, but this is the oldest way of categorizing it. Now we have Abhidhamma, we have Vinaya, we have the suttas, you know, that kind of thing. But you find now this teaching spread out, even in the sutta themselves. We have Majjhima Nikaya, Digha Nikaya, and all this. In Majjhima Nikaya, you can see already those two suttas, which talks about question to answers. Then when you go to Jataka, it's verse stories. That's how it was categorized. Then there's Udana. That's already a book in part of the discourses, the Nikayas. So it's always spread out like that, but this is the oldest way.
Thank you, Bhante.
You're welcome.
Yes, now it's more explanation. We really appreciate it. So there are 3 more sessions of more detailed explanations of the sutta from Bhante.
Right.
So Bhante, let's share merits with all sentient beings and
Yes.
our departed relatives and friends.
Okay. Okay. We can say idame nyatina hotu sukita hotu nyatayo. All right. All right. Idame nyatina hotu sukita hotu nyatayo. Idame nyatina hotu sukita hotu nyatayo. Idame nyatina hotu sukita hotu nyatayo. May the merit that accrues from listening to the Dhamma be shared with all our departed relatives and friends and beings. May all them be happy. May they be free from suffering and causes. May all beings share in this merit. Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yes.
Thank you, Bhante.
You're welcome.
See you the next week.
Yes, see you next week. Thank you.